Hey everybody, this is Devin Knight again. I want to thank you for attending the Power Platform in Your PJs event with us recently. And we're following up with a quick video here to discuss some of the common questions that came up during the event. And of course, we had 5 instructors on the phone, both me, myself, and a team of others answering questions. But we thought it would make sense to do a quick review of some of those more common questions. So that way, if you're having those and you're kind of pondering on them now, you might be able to have some assistance. So let's start with the first one. The first one was the most common question is, how do I get the recordings to this event? Now, the way that we did our recordings for the event is we pre-recorded them through a dashboard in a day pre-recorded event. And the reason why we did that is we wanted to make sure that we could accommodate any incidents that might happen during a live event. Of course, when things are live, things can sometimes go wrong. So we recorded ahead of time not only the material that we covered during the class, but we also discussed and showed how to work through the labs. So the labs, of course, were a big part of the class, and we didn't click for click go through the labs together, but we did record them. And so I want to show you where you can actually go to get signed up and make sure you have access to those recordings. So if you could with me here, we're going to hop over to my web browser. And I want to show you where you can go to sign up. If you go to pragmaticworkstraining.com, so very easy, pragmaticworkstraining.com. And from our training site, you can sign up for our free trial. Now, you might be asking, well, why am I signing up for a trial just to watch recordings of a class I already attended? The trial includes our dashboard in a day recorded, as well as app in a day recorded, which are the classes that you attended during the Power Platform in Your PJs event. When you sign up for the trial, it gives you 7 days access to all of our paid training, all the things that we typically offer that are part of our paid subscription, which you might be interested in. But after the trial, the 7 days of the trial expires, you still have access to the dashboard in a day and app in a day course forever. Those never expire. So you'll be able to go back and review those anytime you want. There's no expiration to that. And we actually update the courses. In fact, we updated the dashboard in a day course shortly after the event to make sure you had the most up-to-date version of what the tool looks like. So you'll sign up for the free trial here. Once you sign up for the free trial, that will gain you access to watch the dashboard in a day recordings as well as app in a day recordings anytime you want. And it never expires, never goes away. It'll be available to you forever. Now, the second thing that I want to discuss is one of the common questions that we had was about licensing with Power BI. This is, of course, a very common question that people are interested in. Do I need a license? Do I need to be thinking about premium? That sort of thing. And so I want to discuss a little bit of licensing within Power BI. The most common thing that comes up is oftentimes people believe that you can create Power BI solutions and share them with others that are going to be viewing your solutions for free. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So if you want to be able to create a solution and then share it with others, not only do you need a Power BI license, but also the individual that you're sharing with will need a Power BI license. And when I say Power BI license, I'm referring to Power BI Pro. So you'll both need a Power BI Pro license. That's priced at $10 per month per user. Okay, so you're looking at about $120 a year per user. And that allows you to have access to not only be able to create solutions, refresh your data, schedule refreshes, schedule things like delivery of your reports to users. It gives you a lot of capabilities, but it also allows your end users to be able to view the reports that you designed. Okay. Now, this is the normal circumstances for more small to mid-sized companies where you'll need just Power BI Pro licenses scattered about. When it comes to very large enterprise customers, where you have high hundreds, if not even thousands of users that need to interact with Power BI, then that's a scenario where you would definitely want to look at Power BI Premium. So I'm going to flip back over to my screen here for a moment again. And I want to show you something called the Power BI Premium Calculator to help you decide whether or not Premium makes sense for you. Now, again, this is really going to be for those enterprise customers that have high hundreds, if not even thousands of users that they need to get Power BI licenses to. And you can see here, as I look at it, you can see we can adjust how many users that this is evaluating or estimating for us. Let's say that we have 1,000 users. Let's make it a nice round number. 5,000 was round as well, but let's say we have 1,000 users. And of those thousands of users that I have, let's say, about 50 of them that are actually doing development. So that's what this Pro users option would be here. Because even if you do Power BI Premium, you still have to have Pro licenses for users that are doing more development and scheduling refreshes and things like that. So let's say of my 1,000 users, I have 50 of them are actually developers, The rest of them, and really this second toggle doesn't really impact the price at all, but my second set of users are just viewing reports. They're just looking at reports. They're doing nothing more than just looking and interacting with reports that the developers have created. Well, if you notice here, the price for Power BI Premium, including the 50 Pro licenses, is $5,500. So just about $5,500. Because you're paying for the Power BI P1 node, that's premium node license, which is roughly $5,000. And then you're also paying for Power BI Pro licenses for those individual users you needed as well. And you can see that right here, 50 units at $9.99 a month. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is if you had thought that I needed to have a Power BI Pro license for all of my users, which would be the normal circumstance for more small to mid-sized companies, in my scenario where I have 1,000 users, that means I'm looking at about $10,000 a month. But with Power BI Premium, I can pay $5,500 a month and not only have my Power BI Pro licenses for my 50 developers, but also have viewer-only access for my 1,000 users that are going to be just interacting with Power BI. So Power BI Premium can be rather cost-effective when you're getting into that enterprise-level number of users that you're interacting with. There are a lot of other features that come specifically with Premium. There's some extra bonuses that you get. There's a lot of them spread about, so I'm not going to discuss them all, but there's a lot of features that are premium only that you get that are a huge benefit to you as well. So keep that in mind as you're considering using Power BI and what kind of licenses is appropriate for you. But generally speaking, if you're not a large enterprise customer that doesn't have thousands of users, then you're purchasing Power BI Pro for each of your users. There's also things like Power BI Embed that you can consider, and I would encourage if you're looking at embedding your Power BI solutions in your own applications, that you invest a little bit of time researching that as well. Okay, the other big thing that we get a lot of questions about is refreshing my data, and how do I ensure that my data in my solution is actually updated on a regular basis. And there's a couple of things to consider whenever you're considering updating data or refreshing data inside of your data sources. One is how up-to-date do you need it? Do you need it to be updated once a day? Do you need it to be updated 5 times a day? Do you need it to be updated up to the minute and have the most recent data up to the minute of what the changes are occurring on the back end? Depending on the answer to that question, you may change which type of data refresh solution you come up with. So there's a couple ways you can do this. By default, when you bring data into Power BI, it uses what's called a data connectivity mode of import, which means that it's going to import your data into Power BI. It's going to store it in Power BI's in-memory technology, which is extremely powerful. And it's going to do that so that you can have reports returned back very quickly and it can render the results very quickly to your end users. The downside of that is if you're importing data into Power BI, is you need to have some mechanism for actually updating the data. You need to have some way that the data that's been imported is then refreshed later as the data changes. Now that's done through a data refresh plan on your data set. So when you're looking inside the Power BI service, we can flip over that here for a moment. When you're looking at the Power BI service, you can see I have a solution here. You'll find that there is underneath or next to your data set an option where you can actually set up and schedule a data refresh. Now to do that, you would need to set up something called a data gateway. And there's some caveats to whether you need a data gateway or not, but let's just assume that you have some on-premises data sources, meaning I'm connecting to a SQL server or an Excel file or an Access database that I have somewhere on my network, and I need to be able to get that data pushed in and refreshed into Power BI. If that's the case, then you would need to install this thing called a data gateway. The purpose of the data gateway is to basically serve as this secure bridge between your on-premises network and data sources you have to the cloud, and the cloud in this case being Power BI. So that data gateway would need to be installed somewhere on your network so that it can be able to push data from your on-premises data sources and put it into the cloud for you. And as part of that, through the refresh plan here, you can decide how frequently do you want your data set to be refreshed. Now here's where Power BI Pro versus Premium comes into play, where you have different feature capabilities. With Power BI Pro, you can refresh up to 8 times a day. With Power BI Premium, you can refresh up to 48 times a day in the UI. But if you're using something like PowerShell and the API behind the scenes with Power BI Premium users can actually refresh unlimited number of times. So there's a couple different things that kind of come to play here. Now, there's another option to consider as well. And this really kind of goes into our last question, which is we got a lot of questions about a feature called Direct Query. Now, Direct Query is a different way of storing data. rather than pulling and importing data into Power BI, it doesn't bring any data into Power BI. Power BI is simply used as kind of a data visualization tool and modeling tool on top of your existing data source. So no data is actually imported into Power BI. That means you're connecting to a data source, let's say SQL Server, for example. And when you connect to that data source, you're then going to be having a live look, a direct queried look into whatever that data source is. The benefit of direct query is you don't have to do any data refreshes. Data refreshing is not really a thing because you're pointing directly to the data source. Now, you might still need a data gateway because if your data sources are on premises, you still need some mechanism to be able to get the data into Power BI, but you don't necessarily have to have a data refresh schedule like you would typically think because direct query is kind of live pushing that data into Power BI for you. So it's a really powerful piece to be able to get data as up to date as possible. You really don't necessarily need to do direct query unless you have a requirement where your data needs to be refreshed up to the minute or up to the hour kind of thing. The other reason you might consider direct query is if you're working with a very, very large data source. And I know that's kind of a very subjective term saying large data source, but let's say you're working with a data source that's 10 billion rows. And if you had to import 10 billion rows into Power BI, that would potentially cause some problems. So direct query gives you the ability to, rather than importing the data, to actually point to the location where the data is stored, and you don't have to constantly refresh it. So some benefits to that. There's also some disadvantages to direct query, though. On the direct query side, one of the major disadvantages is you lose some of the capabilities that are available inside Power BI. When you import, all the features within Power BI are available to you, but with direct query, you'll find that some DAX queries don't work. You'll find that some things that you do in the query editor don't work. There are some things that just don't work whenever you're not importing the data like you would traditionally do. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. The other thing to consider is just because you're connected to the live source doesn't mean you're going to have fast running reports. The performance of your reports can suffer with direct query because each one of your visuals that you have on your machine are a separate query back to your data source. So if you have 8 different visuals on your report, that's 8 different visuals you have to send back to the data source, which could potentially impact the performance of the reports that you've designed. So these are all different things you should consider. I'd love to, of course, talk to you about how we can help you at Pragmatic Works, whether it be through implementation or through additional training with Power BI. Feel free to reach back out to us at training@pragmaticworks.com to discuss any of the additional training needs that you might have, and we'd love to chat with you and learn more about scenarios that we can help you with. Hope you're doing well. Look forward to chatting soon, and take care. Thank you.